off with some of the amusing things that have happened to me. As you may recall from previous presentations, I've been passionate about aviation since I was a kid, and after leaving school, I worked in the international department of the National Bank, but then I sort of begged my father to let me leave the bank, because back in those days you did what your father told you to do, or I did anyway. And after a period, he let me join MMA. But before I did that, I did a trip to Southeast Asia. He said, why don't you just go up to Southeast Asia and fly around there and get that flying thing out of your system. So that's a picture of me in my room in Dalkeith Road, Netherlands, with model aeroplanes. And I was going to go up to Asia on a tour in 1970, and at that stage in my life I was very naive, and my father wrote to some of his suppliers in Asia and said, look, my son's coming up, I want you to take him out to nightclubs and show him a good time and the seedy side of life, all that sort of stuff. So what I did, when I got up to Asia, I cancelled all those engagements and spent my time taking pictures of aeroplanes at the airport. So when I came back from Asia, instead of having all these exotic experiences, I had about 30 boxes of slides of aeroplanes. So, passion wins out though. I eventually talked my father into letting me go north, and I moved from our home in Dalkeith Road, Netherlands, to that in Port Hedland. And I wondered what on earth hit me. In fact, the day I arrived, it was about 40 degrees. I was slumming it, I mean slumming it, with about 8 single men, and the place was an absolute pigsty. It was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I won't describe it, it's just too awful to describe. So I rang my father that night and said, Dad, I want to come home. And he said, not a chance. He said, you're up there now, you're staying up there. And in fact, I stayed up there for 2.5 years. My wife and I recently went up to Port Hedland during COVID. We did the See Western Australia thing like most of us did. And I actually went to that house, still there, and that was me in front of the house in Port Hedland. My wife was absolutely mortified with Port Hedland. She said, this is a shocking place. And I said, you should have seen it 40 years ago. Anyway, with my passion in aviation, I got involved writing occasional articles for different organisations. And in 1981, McDonnell Douglas were bringing an aeroplane to Australia ever. In fact, when she passed away in 2015, I have all the books that documented all the dinner parties that she put on since about, I think it was about 1973. And she had put on a dinner party once every 8 days. And these weren't just simple 1-course, 2-course things. These were multiple choice. And in fact, I looked it up this morning out of the book, and I'll just show you a photograph. That's Mum there with Pete Conrad at our home in Tilton Terrace, City Beach, or their home. For the main course, she offered osso buco, caviar tart, chicken masala and beef stroganoff. And for sweets, she offered pecan pie, apple pie and pavlova, as you do. And there's a rather amusing tale in our family, and that is that when Dad and Mum and Pete Conrad and myself were out on the back terrace of City Beach, the moon was coming up, and Dad said to Pete Conrad, where would you rather be, here or on the moon? And Pete Conrad said, I'd rather be here eating Una's apple pie. Now, my mother, in her later years, would tell me that story every single time I saw her, without fail. And you know something, I would give anything to hear it one more time. Anyway, the risks of passion. So I'm terribly passionate. In 1984, I got an invitation from the Royal Australian Air Force in McDonnell Douglas to go to St. Louis, Missouri, to see the handover of the first F-18 fighter. Now, if any of you folks go down to the Bull Creek Aviation Museum, that same aeroplane is now down there on display. Anyway, that tall street there, is me. The US Consulate organised a tour around America for us as well. And one of the things we did is we went to Brownsville, Texas to see the Confederate Air Force Air Show, and they have all these vintage aeroplanes, and it's an absolute hoot. Hamburgers, hot dogs and aeroplanes. What else has life got for you? Taken at Perth Airport. We do know what he did. Went up there, turned around, came back. One thing we do know, which is rather interesting, when it turned, after several systems were switched off, this turn is now being revealed. That turn experienced pilot. It could not have been done by autopilot. In other words, change the course that the plane fly. It could not have been done by a terrorist who had suddenly become a pilot after some basic training. You have to be extremely skilled to do a sharp turn like that. And the idea of that sharp turn was he had ventured into Vietnamese air traffic and he wanted to get out of it as fast as possible. So a very sharp turn, which confirms who was in control of the aeroplane. That's basically what it alludes to. As you know, the satellite kept pinging the plane and for the next 6 hours, although the systems were shut off, the satellite receiver was not, and it kept responding every hour. Yes, I'm here. I'm not transmitting any stuff, but yes, I'm here. And then at 19 minutes past 8, the plane pinged the satellite, confirming the plane had run out of fuel, powered down, then powered back up after a ram air turbine drops into the airstream, powers back up the satellite transmitter, and then it re-engages with the satellite. So 20 past 8, March 8, 2014, we know it went into the ocean. People talk, one of the things that people talk about is no debris. We didn't start searching, I think I've told you, in this first area until the 18th of March, in other words, 10 days later. 10 days later, not 10 minutes later, not 10 hours later, but 10 days later. The search in the area where we know it is didn't happen until the 28th of March, 20 days later. So there's no chance you're going to get a debris trail, not a chance. And one of the other dynamics to it is, hang on, I've got, no, not on this one. There's 3 cold fronts went through. During that period, 3 cold fronts went through. And why we haven't got any debris in Western Australia is because of the Lewin Current. The West Australian Current, that's where the plane is out there. It takes it all over to Africa, which is where it's all been found. And that's a list of it all. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask questions afterwards. That gives you the level of detail that has been applied to tracking what's been found, who's found it, and where it's been found, and what part it is, etc. Anybody know what that is? I'll clean it up for you. Rolls-Royce insignia off the side of the plane, just there. That was found in Cape Town. There's some pieces of debris that have been found. That's Blaine Gibson with a piece of the floor of the aircraft. There's the first piece of debris that was found, it's the flaperon. How do we know it's from MH370? Very simple. Virtually every piece of an aeroplane has a tag on it, when it was made, who made it, what raw material it came from, because everything is meticulously tracked. Because if there's a flaw in a part, it's highly likely that particular flaw exists in other parts made from the same batch of raw material, and we need to know where they all are, and all of a sudden an airline will get a note from Airbus or Boeing saying, listen, have a look at this part, we think it's flawed, and invariably it is. So Richard Godfrey, I know I've talked to you about him before, aerospace engineer based in Frankfurt. He's English. He designed part of the International Space Station and works on black programs for the military. He has harnessed a thing called weak signal propagation, which is when radio ham operators send a signal around the world from their radio sets. Every 2 minutes a signal goes out. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, I live in Perry Lakes, but this is my call sign. When a plane flies through that, it disturbs it, and since 2009, all ham radio operator signals have been recorded in an international database. So you can go back, as he has done, and you can recreate the flight path based on disturbances to the ham radio operator signals. Now this work
which is